Namaskar, good morning, and welcome to the fourth session of MMPC012 Strategic Management. I welcome all of you today to this very chilly wintry morning, but I'm sure this session will be interesting for all of you. Good morning once again. Well, now let's move on. This is as I said, this is the fourth session of Strategic Management, MMPC012. And in the previous three sessions, as I always do, I do a quick recap. So today also I'm doing a quick recap. In the previous three sessions, we had discussed the block one and part of block two. In block one, we dealt with introduction to strategic management, in which we had studied concept of strategy, strategic framework, and also strategy in global context. In block two, in the previous two classes, we had discussed environmental analysis, in which we had dealt in detail external environment analysis, its importance, and how it can be done, and its importance in strategic management, in strategic formulation. And we had also discussed comparative analysis, but in comparative analysis, we had discussed the various strategies, and we had discussed the importance of comparative analysis for the organization, for the success of the organization. And we had just done an introductory discussion on Michael Porter's five forces framework. Now today we'll discuss the Michael Porter's framework in detail, and then we'll move on to discussing internal environmental analysis. Okay, let's move on. As you see, Unit 5 is related to comparative analysis, and as a result of the discussion and at the end of this particular unit, I hope you'll be able to understand and get a clearer view of concept of comparative forces, the concept of comparative analysis, Porter's five forces framework, role of strategic groups, what are strategic groups in comparative analysis, social media comparative analysis, and also comparative profile matrix. So I hope that by the end of this unit, you would have a better understanding of these concepts in comparative analysis. Now let's move on to Michael Porter's five forces framework. Well, this is a very, very important topic in strategic management, and it is very, very popular when it comes to doing any kind of comparative analysis in an organization. Now, Michael Porter's five forces framework, what is it related to? It is basically, according to this particular concept, comparative analysis is considered to be one of the most important part of strategic analysis. So we know in strategic analysis, we have the internal analysis and we have the external analysis, and the third is the comparative analysis. Now, what would be the comparative analysis? Comparative analysis would be not only the analysis of our organization, it will be the analysis of all those stakeholders which are part of the whole comparative framework. So when I'm talking of stakeholders, so we are going to, it's very important to get a better insight into the details of our competitors. We want to know who the competitors are, what their strategies are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. So, one thing is we do an internal analysis wherein we try to identify our own strengths, our own weaknesses, our own challenges, our own our threats, the threats that we perceive from the external environment. But that will give us an idea of only our organization, our business operations. It does not give us any idea about what our competitors are doing, what other companies in this industry are doing. So it is very important, in order to grow, in order to achieve our own objectives, it's very important that we don't remain close-eyed. We have to keep our eyes open. We have to see what our other competitors, what other business units are doing in the in the industry, so that we don't want to follow them, so that we get an insight into their activities, and accordingly we try to either modify our activities, or we try to strategize and we innovate, so that we have an edge over the other organizations in the business, in the industry. So, what does competitive analysis involve? Competitive analysis involves identifying strategies of the competitor, as I told you. So, it's just not the strategies of our organization. We also want to know, we want to identify the strategies of the competitors. We want to assess their strengths and weaknesses, because if once we know their strengths, then only we can devise our own strategies accordingly. So that we strengthen our system, we try to mitigate our weaknesses, so that we can compete with those organizations. We and then develop own strategy based on identifying the strategies of the competitor, based on identifying their strengths and weaknesses. And we have already done the analysis of the external environment, like we saw the pestle framework in the previous class. Then what we do is, we, after getting a detailed knowledge about the external environment, after getting a detailed knowledge about the internal environment, after getting a detailed knowledge about, or let's say detailed insight about the competitors, then we try to develop our own strategy. We try to establish something unique which sets it apart from other organizations. So, although we are in the same industry, but we will try to do something which sets us apart from, which not sets us apart in the sense positively, it makes us at an advantageous position. So that is what we call as competitive advantage. So we develop our own strategy, we establish unique service proposition of the product or the service that we're trying to develop and we are trying to supply. And then once we have established our unique service proposition, then we are placed at a better position as compared to our competitors. And thus, we can succeed, we can enhance our profitability, we can achieve our objectives, and the organization can grow. So, Michael Porter's five forces framework is basically, as I said earlier, is widely known tool for analysis of the competitive environment. So it helps us in when we talk of analysis of the competitive environment. So it helps us in identifying the our competitors. It helps us in identifying the strategies of our competitors. It helps us in identifying, even to a certain extent, the resources that are being used by the competitors. And it helps us in knowing their strengths and weaknesses, so that we can modify ourselves, so that we can innovate ourselves, and we can place ourselves at a better strategic position as compared to these competitors. Now, what are these five forces? Five competitive forces, as I said. These forces are rivalry among competitors in the industry. So when I'm saying we are doing a competitive, trying to analyze the competitive environment. So the environment, in a way, consists of five forces. And what are these forces? Number one, what kind of rivalry existing among the competitors in the industry? That is the first force. Second force is threat of potential or new entrants. See, the industry is open, so any other organization, any other business unit can enter, or even it can exit. So what is the threat of entry of any new organization? Because when a new business or new company enters the industry, they enter with a lot of energy, they infuse a lot of resources in their system, so as to excel and compete with the business units which are already existing in the industry. So can the companies can succeed. The new companies entering the industry can succeed only when they have something much more superior, when they have something really different to offer, so that they can compete with the existing competitors, with the existing companies in the industry, and the people, the customers, the consumers, let's say the prospective customers, they will also see that yes, this particular new company in the industry, they are offering us something different, so we should buy those products. So that's why, this is a very, very important aspect of study in competitive analysis, that is threat of potential or new entrants. Then we have threat of substitute products and services. So maybe there could be two industries which are similar industries. So we are, let's say, manufacturing electric cars. The company is manufacturing electric cars now, or let's say presently the company is manufacturing ACE or luxury petrol vehicles. Then what is the threat of substitute product? Let's say the substitute product is e-vehicle. So what is the threat of these substitute products and services? And the threat would obviously be because of what the new company, what the other company is bringing in, what kind of new, let's say, different products, substitutes the company is bringing in. And the threat would also be because the external environment might be changing, let's say the legal framework might be changing, government norms and regulations might be changing, and that would help the substitute product, the company manufacturing and selling substitute products to succeed. So threat of substitute products and services is again a very, very important force which the organization needs to study organizations. The fourth force is bargaining power of the suppliers, and the fifth is bargaining power of the buyers. Now let's discuss in detail each one of these forces. We will discuss the elements of each one of these forces. Well, here, this is the Michael Porter's five forces framework. And as we already saw, there are five forces. So you can see here, competitive rivalry, that occupies the central place in this five forces framework. And then we have the bargaining power of the buyers, bargaining power of the suppliers. So on the right hand side, we have the buyer power, that is the bargaining power of the buyer. We have on the left hand side supplier power, that is the bargaining power of the supplier. And on the top is the threat of the new entry. And bottom, we see threat of substitution, that is threat of substitute products. So these are the five forces, and these kind of like, these four forces: new entry, buyer, supplier, substitution. These four forces, they combined jointly, they impinge the competitive rivalry. So now let's see what are the elements of these forces. We begin with the threat of new entry. Now, threat of new entry, what are these elements? There are 6 elements. The time and cost of entry. Like, when the company is entering the market, that is very, very important. That kind of helps in making that kind of helps in formulating the strategies. Your strategies should be such that go to that helps the company in entering at the right time. Like, for example, the company is into winter wear. We are in winter, so I'm giving you the example of winter wear. The company is, let's say, decides to enter the industry wherein it's an industry of winter wears, apparels which are winter wears. Now, the company should do kind of strategic formulation much before the winter approaches, so that when the winter sets in, the company enters the market with full force, and it enters the market at the right time. And what is the cost of entry? That also the company has to see, that if it sees that there are already too many forces, too many players in this particular industry, then it has to see what it can offer. Can it offer something which is different from already existing products? So depending on that, it has to decide. And if it is deciding to enter the market, then it has to see what is the cost of the entry. Then the specialist knowledge. Does the company have specialized knowledge, economies of scale, cost advantages, technology protection, and barriers to entry? There are also sometimes there are certain barriers. There are certain factors which act as barriers, act as hurdles for entry. So the company has to also see that. That is one force. Now we move to the second force, that is the buyer power. Now, the buyer power, obviously, when we are talking of um, bargaining power of buyers, so we are talking of the consumers, we are talking of the customers. So we have to see buyer power means the number of customers existing. How much, what is the customer base for a particular industry? So if the customer base is very small, then the company will have to think whether it will be wise to enter this particular industry, or if the number of customers, let's say the customer base, like for example, our country, India, is a huge consumer base. So we generally say that it's such a huge consumer base that most of the time, companies with the right kind of strategy, with the right kind of strategic implementation, execution, and right kind of monitoring, the company succeeds because the consumer base is very large. And if the consumer base is very large, then obviously there would be many choices, many likes and dislikes, and each company in the industry will be able to cater to a particular segment of the consumer base. So the number of customers, then the size of each order, differences between the competitors, price sensitivity. Now, how price sensitive the market is. So, if in case, like we say that in our country is very price sensitive. So, what do we try? What do the customers try to do? The customers, they want quality, but at the same time they want it should be rightly priced. Our country, we have, there's a very large middle income group, there is a very large lower middle income group. So people in the middle income group, lower income group, they would like to buy products, new products, advanced products, but at the same time, they don't want to pay too much. So our country is very price sensitive. So the buyer power would be the price sensitivity would actually define the buyer power. Then ability to substitute and cost of changing. Now, what is the cost of changing? Like for example, that also forms part of the buyer power as a force in competitive analysis. Cost of changing. How prepared are we to spend to change what we already have? Like again, let's take the example of let's say the housing. How rich is the segment, the population segment? How often can they change a house? They cannot. For that matter, let's say we also talk of cost of changing is, let's say we are already using one vehicle, we want to change the vehicle. So what we will do, we as a consumer, we as a buyer, we would like to see how much expense would be incurred if we go on to change this particular vehicle. So what would be the cost of this change? If the cost of change is too high, then we will see whether the presently used vehicle, can it serve our purpose, is it good enough? And if we see that yes, it is good enough, then why do we go for change? But yes, if we see that, like for example, now the norms are very strict norms, environmental, let's say pollution norms are coming, wherein which is forcing the people to change their vehicles. So although the cost of changing is high, yet we don't have any option, we have to change the vehicle. But even in that, then in that case, we will see in the industry which all companies are there, what all vehicles are there, which comply to the presently vehicle norms, which comply to the pollution norms, and accordingly in that, whichever product fits our pocket, we will buy that. So buyer power is a very important force, according to Michael Porter, for competitive analysis. Third is threat of substitution. Now, what is threat of substitution? In threat of substitution, there are only two elements. One is substitute performance and the cost of change. So for every company in the industry, when they are supplying the products in the market, they will see what is the threat coming from other organizations, other companies, which are coming up with substitute products, not directly related products, but the products which are substitute. Like I gave you the example of electric vehicle. It is a vehicle, obviously, but it is completely different. So, what is the threat of substitution? So, can we bear that threat? And if in case we are foraying into a new market, we have to see whether the force is very, very strong, whether the threat of substitution is very strong. Accordingly, we have to position our product, we have to develop our product which matches the present industry, and to a certain extent it also has certain characteristics and features of the substitute product, so that it can kind of match the substitutes, and it can match the presently existing products also. Then the supplier power. Now, competitive rivalry is also affected by the number of suppliers existing in the market. The suppliers, the people who are the people obviously who are supplying the raw material. They are part of the resources. So the number of suppliers, the size of suppliers, uniqueness of service, your ability to substitute, and cost of changing. So again, supplier power, that is bargaining power of supplier, that again is an important force in the Michael Porter's framework for doing the competitive analysis. Last is threat of new entry. Threat of new entry, as I said, time and cost of entry, specialist knowledge, economies of scale, cost advantages, technology protection, and barriers to entry. Now, all these things, they define the force which either, it acts as a threat for us to enter a new industry. And then, of course, we have the competitive rivalry, which is the fifth and the most important force. Now, what comprises competitive rivalry? The number of competitors, the quality differences. The products are obviously, let's say the product is jam. A simple thing I'm taking, jam and preserve. That is the product. Now, what is the difference in quality of the jam which company A is supplying, company B is supplying, company C is supplying, company D is supplying? So, what is the quality? What is the price of the product? What are the other differences? Like, for example, percentage of fruit extract in the jam. Now, that would obviously differentiate the product, and accordingly it will differentiate the kind of competition the different rivalries are having, and also customer loyalty. What kind of loyalty exists? What kind of customer loyalty exists for these products? All these different elements, they together combine to form the competitive rivalry in the Michael's five forces framework. Now depending on this, the company which has good quality products, it is able to supply a very unique, highly differentiated product. It has a good customer base. The customers, when I'm saying good customer base, means there is a demand for its products. You have a good supply of resources. The threat of substitution is less, and threat of new entry again is the kind of product you are developing, you are manufacturing, you are supplying in the market, that can compete with the potential entrants in the industry. So if you have all these factors will help you to have an overall competitive advantage over your rivals It will reduce the rivalry for you. You will not be threatened, but then you are not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to be static. Even if you are having competitive advantage over your rivals, even if you are having competitive advantage over the other companies in the industry, what is required is you have to continuously do the analysis, do the external analysis, do the internal analysis, do the competitive analysis, so as to be aware, so as to know the changing stance, so as to know the changing likes and dislikes of the customers, and accordingly you reformulate your strategies, re-implement them, and grow. So, in order to ensure competitive advantage over other organizations, it's very important that the company has to continuously analyze and reanalyze, re-strategize, so as to remain successful, so as to remain leader in the market. Now we go to study the next concept, that is strategic groups. Now, what are strategic groups? These are basically, they're also known as the conceptual clusters. Now, why do we what are basically strategic groups in the industry? We The strategic groups are used in the industry for improving the analysis and understanding competition within the industry. Now, we might be having one industry, but the industry varies in the similarity of their business organization in terms of strategies pursued. So, like I have given the two types of strategies to be analyzed separately. So, heterogeneous industry can comprise of multiple strategic groups. Although, see, the industry might be manufacturing similar kind of products, but since the products are similar but they are not same, so we would be having within the industry, we would be having different strategic groups. That is kind of, you can say, a more focused way of analyzing the competition, analyzing the environment. So we would, within the industry, we would try to segregate, we would try to put the different products in different groups, and each product manufactured by different companies, that would form one strategic group. I've given you and obviously the environmental analysis for each strategic group would be different. Let's say we have cars, 1000 cc cars, then we have a next segment 1500 cc cars, then we have another segment which is 2000 cc cars, and then we have another segment which is 3000 or 3-liter cars. Now, each of these kinds of cars, the companies which are manufacturing each of these kinds of cars, each one of them would form a strategic group. So 1000 cc cars, that would be the companies, that would be one strategic group. So in order to have a kind of environmental analysis, so environmental analysis for a 1000 cc car market would be different, for 1500 cc car market would be different, for 2000 cc car market would be different, and also the environmental analysis for a 3-liter car market would be different, because the product is different, the raw material is different, the customer base is different, the choice of the customers is different, their purchasing power is different, their cost of change is also different. So accordingly, the analysis would also be, the level of analysis and the type of analysis would also be very different. So what it means? It means we cannot have one kind of strategic environmental analysis across the organization, across the industry. Within the industry, based on the different kinds of products existing in the industry, based on different kind of companies manufacturing different kinds of products, supplying different kinds of products in the market, based on that, the the we'll do the clustering, we will do the strategic grouping, and accordingly we will do the environmental analysis. I've given you the example here of food processing industry. So one strategic group could be of jam and preserves. See, this is all part of the food processing industry. Within the food processing industry, we have different products. So one strategic group would be could be for jam and preserves, one strategic group could be for sauce and ketchups, one strategic group could be for salad dressings, one strategic group could be for sandwich spreads. So although these products are all within the same industry, that is food processing industry, but how we are analyzing our competitors, how we are analyzing the environment, how we are analyzing the internal environment, how we are analyzing not only our competitors, their strengths, their weaknesses, how we are analyzing our strengths, our weaknesses, all that would be different for each kind of product existing in the market within the same industry. And accordingly, each product together would form the strategic group. And obviously, the where we have homogeneous industry, that is within the industry, single kind of product is manufactured and supplied in the market. So there, obviously, there would be only one strategic group, and that strategic group will have one kind of product, and analysis would also be much more simpler but wider. Now we come to the sixth unit. I had already told you earlier that in the block 2, the environmental analysis, we had 3 units. Fourth, external environment analysis. Fifth, competitive analysis. And the sixth one is internal environmental analysis. Now let's quickly go to the sixth unit, that is that deals with internal environmental analysis. Now when we're talking of internal environmental analysis, that means we are talking of the study of the environmental factors within the organization. So what you'll be able to understand at the end of this particular unit, you will understand the concept of what is internal analysis and its contribution to that is what is internal analysis and its importance in strategy formulation. It's very important for us to analyze our external environment. It's very important to analyze our competitors, their threats, their strategies, and it is also important to know ourselves. See, until unless we know the world, but if we don't know ourselves, can we succeed? No. So it's very important that we also do self-analysis, self-learning, self-analysis, because result of self-analysis would be helping us in knowing what is our strength, what is our weakness, where do we stand, are we moving in the right direction, do we have enough resources. Internal analysis would be obviously analysis of our resources, analysis of our strategies, analysis of our policies, analysis of our plans. Where do we stand? Our resources, do we have enough? We are trying to foray into a new market, but do we have enough of capabilities? Do we have competencies to match the threats, the challenges that exist in that new market? Well, all this will help us in strategic formulation. It will also internal environmental analysis, the unit 6. Once we complete this, you would also be able to understand the concept of core competencies. You will able to understand the guidelines to assess what resource and abilities constitute core competency of an organization, because core competency is like it is one of the most important factors in environmental analysis, internal environmental analysis, because core competency is the rich internal resource which has a significant role to play. It plays a pivotal role in in the success of the organization. So, as I said, you'd also understand the types of resources which organizations possess and their strategic importance. You will learn the concept of value chain framework, and also we will try to discuss very much in detail what is the SWOT analysis. Okay, let's move on. Internal analysis. What is internal analysis? Internal analysis is basically it is used in understanding the organizational capabilities that affect the development of successful strategies. How do we develop successful strategies when we don't know what we are? It's very important that we try to have a clear cut understanding of what we are, where we are, what is our purpose, what is our mission, what is our vision, and in order to achieve the mission and vision, what we have and what we require to do. So that all this forms a part of the internal analysis. Until unless we don't understand what we are, that what do I mean by what we are? I mean the organizational, what is our capability. Once we have a clear cut understanding of our capabilities, then only we will be able to develop the right kind of strategies. Strategic development is concerned with strategic capability that suits the changing environment. So when we are talking of successful strategy, that is when we are talking of a strategic formulation, strategic development of strategies, obviously we are concerned with the strategic capabilities. So when we are talking of organizational capabilities, so organizational capabilities would obviously have, some would be the general capabilities, and then there would be certain capabilities which kind of have the power, or they have the capability of making or breaking the organization. So we will focus, as a part of internal analysis, we will focus on the strategic capabilities, the very, very important resources which will help us in managing the changing environment. Then the internal capabilities and process execution helps gaining competitive advantage over other companies. So it is just not the external environmental analysis, it is just not the competitive environmental analysis. The internal environmental analysis is equally important for successful strategic development. Now we go to a very interesting and important model which helps us in understanding in doing the internal analysis, that is resource based view model. So what is basically a resource based view model? In short, it is called RBV model. RBV model is a model for internal analysis, and that model sees resources as a key to superior firm performance. So it gives or it renders maximum importance to the internal resources of the organization. It sees resources as the most important component for the success of the organization. It sees resources, the internal resources, as the key factor in the successful strategic development of the organization. So this particular model, it focuses on the internal resources, and it says that internal resources are the key resources which will help the organization to perform better. It will help the organization to perform better than its competitors. And thus, it will help the organization to have an edge over others. It will help the organization to be at a much more competitively advantageous position. So, if a resource exhibits VRIO, we will just move on to see what is VRIO. VRIO, V stands for valuable, R stands for rare, I for inimitable, and O stands for organized. So if the resources exhibit these traits, these characteristics, or let's say if the resources in the organization have these traits, these attributes, these qualities, then the resources in the organization helps the organization to grow. It helps the organizations to succeed. It helps the organization to occupy a much more competitive, advantageous position as compared to its rivals. So, RBV model considers resources as a key to superior organizational performance. So, in a way, what does it mean? It means the organization in the industry or the company in the industry which has um, superior resources, which has adequate and superior resources, that organization will have better performance. It will be able to perform much more superior as compared to its rivals, and it will be able to achieve its organizational objectives in the long run, and thus be at an ace position as compared to its competitors. And strategic decisions made, the and according to this model, the strategic decisions, the important decisions in the organization are based on resources and capabilities. So, what the organization should do? The organization should first of all do a thorough analysis, a thorough study of the resources it has, the capabilities it has, and based on the resources and the capabilities, it should do the necessary strategic decision making. Now, so internal resources and capabilities, they together form the core competencies of the organization. And once the organization has these core competencies, that means it has the necessary resources, it has the necessary capabilities, it has the necessary talent, then only it will be able to match or respond to the external environmental factors. So organizations should look inside to find. Now, I'm repeating, the organization, as I said earlier, as per the RPV model, the organization should look inside the company. So it is just not looking outside the company. That is, it is just not looking at the capabilities of the competitors, capabilities of the rivals in the industry. It is just not looking at the external environmental forces, but it involves looking at the company from inside. And these internal factors would be the sources of competitive advantage instead of looking at the competitive environment for it. So we try to find out what do we have, what are our strengths, what are our resources, what resources are better than the resources of the other organizations. And once we have a thorough understanding of our resources, then only we will be able to develop superior strategies and implement them, and thus have competitive advantage over other organizations. So it is just not the external environment factors, it is also the internal environmental factors, the internal resources, the internal talent, the internal competencies which form the resource base for the organization. And this, a strong, rich resource base, will pave the way for the organization to succeed in the future. Now, resources in the resource-based RBV model can be tangible as well as intangible assets. They could be the assets of the organization. So it could be the tangible assets, it could be the intangible assets, the quantifiable assets, or qualitative assets. It could be the core competencies. It could be, as we've already discussed, it could be the capabilities. It could be the not only the resources as such, it could also be the organizational processes, how we are trying to do a particular kind of work, the processes involved, the innovation involved, the technology involved, the knowledge that the company has, the database that the company has, how it is interpreting, how it is analyzing the data, and as a result the kind of decision it is taking. All this forms a part of the resources in the RBV model. And the resources, according to RBV model, the resources for the in the organization for having competitive advantage over other rivals, these resources should be heterogeneous. That is, resource existing in the company should be different from the resources existing in other companies, because if the resources are different from the resources of the other companies, then only we will be able to differentiate ourselves, then only the company will be able to differentiate itself from the other companies. So that would mean what? That only will help the company to be superior, to be more competent, to have better capabilities, better know-how, more technologically advanced. So it will be, so in a way the resources is just not enough to have resources. But suppose we have financial resources, we have the machinery, we have the technology, we have the human resource, but all this is very similar to what our company our competitor has. So will we have an edge over them? No, we cannot have an advantageous position. We will not lead in the market, we will not lead in the industry. So what we should have, we should have our resources should be heterogeneous, they should be much superior as compared to the resources of our competitors, and also the resource should be immobile. That is, our company, our environment, our internal, let's say, organizational culture, our organizational climate, the group dynamics, the relationship, peer group relationship, the relationship within the employees, the relationship between the different hierarchies, the relationship between the levels of employees, all that should be such that the resources are immobile. That is, the resources are not transferable to other organizations. It's not that, people, the employees who are working in our organization, let's say they are not satisfied, they're not happy with the internal culture, let's say the organizational climate, and there's not much of cohesiveness, they feel that they are being neglected. So what they do, they say fine, we move to our we move to other company in the industry. So this is what, this is mobility of the resources, so we tend to lose. So our organizational climate, our culture should be such, our resource, our let's say the whole organizational process, the whole internal environment should be such that the resources that we have, they remain with us. We are able to retain the resources. There is no turnover. There is no attrition in the organization, and the people, the other resources, they remain within us. There is no leakage of information, there is no data leakage. So in this era of cyber security, all our data also needs to be secure. It's just not the human resource, it is also the information existing in the organization. There should be data privacy. So that all this will help in retaining the resources within the organization, and thus the organization would be having kind of advantageous position over the rivals. Now, there are the resources existing in the organization. There are four traits of these resources. The heterogeneous and immobile, we already know what is heterogeneous and what is immobile resources. They should have four traits. Now, what is considered to be an heterogeneous and immobile resource? They should be valuable, that is, resource having cost advantage or differential advantage. They should be valuable resources. They should be rare in the sense they should be unique. They should be unique to our organization. These resources are such resources which cannot be duplicated, which cannot be copied by our rivals. They should be inimitable. They cannot be imitated. They cannot be acquired. They remain unique to our organization. They are result of our own scientific research. So as a result of our own scientific research and development, we have our own products which cannot be copied. Then they should be properly organized for gaining strategic advantage. So the resources, they should be used properly. They should be put in place where they are needed. They should not be used in a haphazard manner. The use of resources should be a planned use of resources. All these four traits make the resource heterogeneous and immobile. And if particular organization has resources which have or which possess these four different kinds of traits, then it is considered to be the to have core competency. It is considered to have the resources which will make it more competitive, which will make it more successful. So you can see here the RBV model, it relies on the resources. The resources could be tangible, it could be intangible, and all these resources, whether it is tangible or intangible, whether they are quantifiable, whether they are qualitative, they must be heterogeneous, they must be immobile, and they should possess VRIO traits. That all these together will help the organization to acquire a competitively advantageous position over other organizations. Now, we now discuss the framework for organizational analysis. There are two frameworks for analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the organization, that is internal strengths and weaknesses. One is critical success factor, and the second one is value chain framework. Critical success factor contributes to these are those factors which contribute to the organization's success in the competitive environment. Now, what are these factors? These are the industry characteristics and the competitive position. Now, what is industry characteristics? Now, these are the factors which are critical for the success of the industry. Now, whether our organization, whether our internal organization, whether the strengths and weaknesses, the strengths of the organization and the weaknesses which we need to look into, which we need to study and try to remove them, whether the strengths of the organization, whether they characterize us in such a way that we succeed in the industry. And the second critical success factor, source of critical success factor, is the competitive position. Where do we stand vis-a-vis our competitors? These are the two sources of critical success factors, and studying these two, we are able to do the organizational analysis. The second framework for internal organizational analysis is the value chain framework. Now, any business according to value chain framework, any business is seen as a number of linked activities, and each activity adds value for the customer. What are these activities? Let's go and look into the framework. Now, value chain framework, as you see here, is when the business or the company identifies its primary and secondary activities and sub-activities and evaluates the efficiency of each point. So, according to the value chain analysis of the organization, there are two kinds of activities: the primary activities, and there are the secondary or the supporting activities. As you see here in the illustration, in the pictorial depiction of value chain framework, you will see here there are primary activities and there are support activities or the secondary activities. And in this value chain framework, what do we try to analyze? We try to analyze the primary activities, we try to analyze the secondary activities, and based on the analysis, based on the evaluation of these activities, we say whether what kind of linkages are existing, what kind of dependencies are existing, and what patterns in the value chain exist. Once we are able to understand the relationship between these activities, how much each activity contributes to the overall functioning of the organization, we are able to define the value of the strategy that we are following. So you see here primary activities: the inbound logistics, the operations, the outbound logistics, the marketing and sales, and the service. Service means the after sales service or maintenance. Now, all these various components are considered to be the primary activities of the organization. And so we have to, as a part of value chain analysis, what we said that any business is seen as a number of linked activities, each producing value. So all these primary activities, they together add value to the product or the service that we are supplying to our customers. So the kind of, that means what, just inbound logistics alone cannot do anything, or let's say marketing and sales cannot do anything. Suppose the product is not good, we are not able to supply on time, we are not able to reach our customers, and even if we have reached our customers, we are not able to provide adequate after sales service, we are not able to provide them adequate maintenance service, then the value chain is broken. So then it is not considered to be, that means there is something wrong. So we need to set it right. We need to analyze each and every element. We need to analyze each and every activity in the organization for having a competitive advantage over our rivals. So what are the secondary activities? Secondary activities is the procurement, the technological development, the human resource management, the firm infrastructure. These are considered to be secondary activities or support activities. They support the primary activities, and together they add value to the system, together they add value to the product, together they add value to the organization, and that helps the organization to have a margin over others. Now we go to studying SWOT analysis. As we already know, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats of the organization. It is a tool to analyze the analysis of the organization, what we can do best, and what we can do further to improve for the future, that is to devise a successful strategy for the future. So based on the analysis of our strengths, based on our weaknesses, based on the analysis of our opportunities, based on the analysis of our threats, we try to do the strategic development, and it helps us in understanding all those factors which are playing a negative role, which are acting as hurdles for the organization, and it also helps us in understanding our competencies that are together helping the organization to grow. So SWOT analysis is both analysis of the internal factors and also analysis of the external factors, and the analysis typically involves a kind of matrix. I'll show you the matrix just now. What's working for your business, that is strength. What's not working, that is the weakness. What external factors are the factors which we can capitalize on, which if we want, we can use them for the growth. And well, okay, this is the SWOT analysis, the framework that I told you. We move on. We have already discussed this. We move on to the block 3 in the next session, and in the block 3 we will have unit 7 business level strategy, unit 8 competitive strategy, unit 9 corporate level strategy. These 3 units comprise the formulation of strategy, which is the block 3 of MMPC012 strategic management. We will discuss this in the next session. I would again like to remind you, dear learners, please do study the study material which has been provided by the university to you, and also please do the self progress questions. Please do these self assessment questions. They are very important and they help you in ensuring preparedness for the examination. Also, please try to see the assignment questions and try solving them, because solving the assignments, timely studying and solving the assignments will help you in preparing for the examinations. All the best. I hope to see you next Thursday, the same time, for discussing the block 3 of MMPC 012. Namaskar. Thank you.